Arriving early, the Dragon Emperor Vaelorix, the Eternal, was never early. For 3,000 years, his schedule had been carved into the obsidian tablets of the imperial calendar with the precision of a master jeweler. Courtiers, generals, and tributary kings adjusted their lives to his rhythm. To arrive before the emperor was to invite suspicion. To arrive after was to invite death. So when Vaelorix descended from his storm cloud chariot a full hour ahead of the grand ascension ceremony, the palace fell into chaos no one dared show. He had come early for a reason no one knew, not even his closest viziers. A dream, rare and unwelcome, had plagued him the night before. A human, small and frail, standing before the dragon throne and refusing to bow. The image had burned behind his golden eyes all morning. Vaelorix disliked mysteries. He resolved to walk the halls himself, unseen, cloaked in a glamour of shadow and silence. The emperor's true form was too vast for mortal corridors' wings that blotted out the sun, scales like plates of living. Starlight so, he took the shape of an unremarkable draconic scribe, dull bronze scales, modest horns, a simple robe of gray silk. None would look twice at such a creature. He glided through the hall of eternal flame, past the kneeling ranks of gold-armored wirms, and into the servants' passages behind the throne room. There, the air smelled of ash, sweat, and fear. Hundreds of lesser species goblins, kobolds, gnomes, and a handful of humans scurried to prepare the chamber for the ceremony that would renew the emperor's dominion over the 9 realms. Vaelorix paused at the threshold of the antechamber. A single human stood there alone. The man was young by human standards, perhaps 30 summers broad-shouldered, but thin from labor. His brown hair was tied back, his tunic patched and stained. He was on his knees, not in reverence, but scrubbing the floor with a brush. The section he cleaned was directly before the dragon throne itself, the sacred obsidian circle where only the emperor's claws were permitted to tread. A kobold overseer hissed from the doorway. "Faster, Terran scum. The emperor's procession begins soon." The human did not quicken his pace. He worked methodically, almost gently, as though the stone were something precious. Vaelorix watched, unseen. Then the human did something no servant had done in recorded history. He stopped scrubbing, sat back on his heels, and looked up at the empty throne. The massive seat of black glass and dragon bone loomed above him, carved with the faces of every emperor since the first flight. The human's expression was not fear nor hatred. It was sorrow. He reached into his pocket and drew out a small object, a worn copper coin, human minted, bearing the profile of some long-dead king from Terra. He placed it gently on the obsidian circle, right where the emperor's foreclaw would rest during the ceremony. Then he whispered words too soft for any draconic ear yet Vaelorix, with his ancient hearing, caught them. "I'm sorry we couldn't do better." The human bowed his head not to the throne, but to the coin, picked up his brush, and resumed scrubbing as though nothing had happened. Vaelorix felt something shift inside his chest. It's a sensation he had not known since the wars of conquest. Uncertainty. Ceremony began precisely on schedule because Vaelorix forced himself to wait the remaining hour in silent fury and fascination. When he finally strode into the throne room in his true form, the assembled nobility roared their approval. Flames erupted from braziers. The 9 realms' banners unfurled. Tribute was laid at his feet. Mountains of gold, caged star beasts, weeping princesses of lesser species. Vaelorix ascended the dais. Its claw came down exactly where the human had placed the coin. He felt it beneath the scale of his foot, small, round, warm from the servant's hand. Throughout the endless oaths of fealty, the emperor's mind was elsewhere. He scanned the ranks of servants lining the walls. The human was there, head bowed like all the others, indistinguishable except for the faint redness on his knuckles from scrubbing. When the ceremony ended and the court dispersed into the feast of eternal dominion, Vaelorix summoned his grand vizier, the ancient worm Sarathax. "Find the human who cleaned the sacred circle today," he rumbled. "Bring him to my private area at midnight, unharmed." Sarathax's eyes narrowed. a human majesty. "Shall I have the inquisitors prepare the unharmed?" Vaelorix repeated, voice like grinding glaciers. Midnight came. The human was escorted into the Emperor's area cavern, open to the stars, perched atop the volcanic peak of Mount Dominion. Wind howled through the vast space. Treasures glittered in heaps, swords of fallen heroes, crowns of extinct kingdoms, the preserved hearts of rival dragons. The human, his name, Vaelorix had learned, was Elias Can, stood without trembling. He did not kneel. Vaelorix dismissed the guards with a flick of his tail. Then he shrank to his scribe disguise and regarded the man. "You placed a coin beneath my claw," the Emperor said quietly. Elias met his gaze. "I did." "Why?" Elias hesitated, then shrugged. "Because someone should remember." "Remember what?" "That you weren't always emperor? That once your kind and mine met as equals. Before the conquest? Before the chains?" Valerix's nostrils flared. "You speak of the Accord of First Landing, a myth taught to human children to keep them docile." "It's not a myth," Elias said. "My great-grandmother was there. She served as translator when your ancestor, Valer, the Starborn, first met the human delegation on Terra. They shared wine. They spoke of alliance, not conquest. Then your ancestor decided alliance was too slow. The Emperor was silent for a long time. You risked your life for a memory," he said at last. "I risked it the day I was born into servitude," Elias replied. At least this way, the risk meant something. Vaelorix felt that strange sensation, again uncertainty, deepening into something perilously close to shame. "Leave the palace tonight," he said finally. "I will grant you safe passage to the free human enclaves beyond the Ashen Sea." Elias shook his head. "I won't abandon the others." "Then you will die here, maybe. But someone has to stay and remember." The act that shook the Empire word spread strangely in a palace built on fear. Within a week, every servant goblin, kobold, human knew that a human had placed a coin beneath the Emperor's claw and lived. Within a month, small tokens began appearing in hidden places. A river stone on a windowsill where a dragon lord would rest his hand. A pressed flower tucked into the saddle of a war drake. A child's wooden toy left on the desk of the imperial treasurer. None bore threats. All bore memory. The nobility laughed at first. "Let the lesser creatures play their sentimental games," they said. But the tokens kept appearing. And the servants began to meet the eyes of their masters without flinching. Vaelorix watched it happen. He issued no orders to stop it. He could have crushed the movement in a single breath. Instead, he began walking the servants' passages again in his scribe disguise, listening. One night he found Elias teaching a circle of young servants, mostly human. But some kobolds too how to read the old runes from the Accord of First Landing. It's carved faintly into the palace's foundation stones. When the group dispersed, Vaelorix revealed himself. "You spread sedition." He said. "I spread truth," Elias answered, unafraid. The Emperor stared at him for a long moment, then slowly. He reached into a pouch at his belt and drew out the original copper coin, the one Elias had placed beneath his claw. He held it out. "Teach me," Vaelorix said. Elias's eyes widened. "Teach me what your great-grandmother saw when my ancestors shared wine with humans. Teach me the words that were spoken before conquest. So in the shadows beneath the greatest empire the world had ever known." A human servant began to teach a dragon emperor what it meant to be something other than feared. Years later, historians would argue over the precise moment the empire began to change. Some pointed to edicts freeing human enclaves. Others to the day kobolds were granted seats on minor councils. A few whispered of the night the emperor himself was seen placing a simple river stone on the grave of an elderly human servant. But those closest to the truth knew it began with a single act of quiet defiance, a servant daring to apologize. On behalf of his entire species, to the throne that had crushed them, and an emperor arriving early enough to witness it.